Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to Candidates Night here in Effingham. I'm Susan Slack. I'm the town moderator. I'm also on the ballot again this year as town moderator. So I won't take very much time since nobody is running against me for that office. I can't imagine why. So I won't take much time, but I would just say that I enjoy being the town moderator most of the time. Sometimes not. I hope if you have questions about how town meeting works or how you might get something before town meeting, you know, let me know during town meeting. I'm always open to questions, and my goals are to run the town meeting efficiently so we don't spend our entire Saturday there, but also give everybody a chance to say what they need to say. And that's about all I'll say about running for town moderator. Our goal tonight is to introduce you to all the candidates on the ballot who are here. There are two positions for which we have contested races, and we have a couple of positions that are running unopposed. And we have a couple of offices for which nobody has signed up to run. So perhaps you want to consider a write-in campaign. So what we'll do tonight is just go through the various offices, invite people up to the front, give a minute or two talk about who you are, why you're running, what you want to do as that elected office, and then open it up to questions. What I thought I'd do is start tonight with planning board candidates and end with selectmen candidates and get everybody else in between. So does that sound like it's going to work? And throughout the evening, feel free to get up and enjoy the refreshments, and feel free to ask whatever questions you want to ask of the candidate, and let's be friendly and respectful of everybody. So those are the rules. So let's start with planning board. So there's a planning board seat, a 3-year term, 2 people are running, and you can vote for not more than 2. So it's not a contested race, but if George Bull and Paul Potter would come up, we can begin the night. And they are both, wherever you want to be, whatever's comfortable, whether you want to stand or sit.
What do you want to do?
We can take our regular seats.
Creatures of habit here. So there are 2 positions and only 2 candidates, so you get to vote for 2. And they are both incumbents, have served on the planning board for a number of years. So let's go alphabetically, George Bull and then Paul Potter. So George, just take a minute or 2 and then you, Paul.
My name's George Bull. I've been on the planning board. This will be, I believe, my 4th time running, so 10 years almost. And basically I'm running again because I think that the planning board that we've got right now works pretty well. We all cooperate, and we're all getting along, and I've got the experience of being on the board, so I'm familiar with a lot of the regulations. I'm familiar with a lot of the state regulations, and I'm also familiar with some of the problems, just teething problems with the planning board regulations. And one of the things we've been trying to do as a planning board is not necessarily add new regulations, as opposed to try to clarify and make the ones that we have mesh a little bit better and just kind of update those. And I'd like to continue doing that. I'm not necessarily gung-ho on, I don't think this town really needs a lot of new zoning regulations, but I do think that we could do a lot to improve some of the regulations we have in place to make them simpler and make them easier for people to follow. And so that's basically why I'm running again, because I kind of have an idea of the history of them and where they've worked and where they haven't worked. And I think that'd be it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, so let's go with Paul, and then when Paul's finished, we'll open it up to questions.
I'm Paul Potter. What he said. I've been on the board for big chunks of time with a few mini vacations since 1976. I am familiar with the rules and regulations and also how the rules and regulations came to be made. For example, one thing that you will see on the ballot this year is we are changing the wording of several of our regulations. One being that when new roads are created in town, the road agent will have a say on them. Well, the town has not had a road agent for lo these many years, but at the time the regulations were instated, back in '73, there was a road agent voted in by the town. Whether he was qualified to judge the construction of new roads or not was a moot point, but that particular paragraph was copied in whole cloth from some other town. And for those of you who don't remember, planning was rushed in much as zoning was by in this case, by a very large subdivision, can we say Lost Valley. Nothing against Lost Valley, that's what caused the planning board to come into its existence. But I know the reasons behind some of these regulations. I also know when there is a subdivision or a change of land use, I'm aware of its location in town and what it could entail for the abutters. In some cases, there's absolutely no problem. And in other cases, as Bodie Van Tassel once said, "Oh, you want a piece of swamp over there? Ain't worth a damn thing." Not that I would be quite as blunt as Bodie was. But anyway, that's why I'm running. I would like to continue doing the work that George talked about, and I enjoy being able to pass along a little bit of knowledge of the town.
A lot of knowledge.
Okay, so questions. Lawrence.
This is to both of you. I congratulate you for voting, for running for this position, and I think you're both doing a good job at it. I don't have any questions for either one of you. I think that you both do a good job at what you do.
Thank you very much.
That was easy. Softball there. Anybody questions for either of the candidates running for planning board? Okay. Thank you very much. That was fun. Okay, so why don't we move on to the budget committee? And there are 4 people running for budget committee for a 3-year term, and you vote for not more than 2. So budget committee candidates, that would be Gary Dean, Tim Eldridge, Charles Fuller, and David Strauss. So that is a bit of a contest. Who's not here? And those of you who just came in, come on in and grab a seat and some refreshments. Who's missing? Tim. No Tim?
No, he's probably somewhere with the kids. I think it's vacation.
Oh, yeah.
It's
right.
not vacation. That's Conway.
Yeah. All right. So, David, do you want to start?
Oh, sure.
And you are
Chuck.
Chuck and
Gary.
Gary. Okay. David Strauss.
Hey, Strauss.
And again, we'll just do a minute or 2 of who you are, why you're running, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Currently on the budget committee for the last 4 years. I've been in town since 2013. I retired from the shipyard as an engineer, and I feel I have a lot of time to help the community. I'm interested in the budget committee. I like to find out how and where the numbers go. We have the unfortunate thing of losing some valuable membership in our committee this year, which next year we're going to need some experience, and I feel I can provide some experience on the committee to help guide them through that.
You are currently a member of the budget committee? Yes. Okay, Gary.
I'm Gary Dean. How you doing? Probably wondering who the new guy is. I just moved to town 3 years ago from the big city of Wolfboro. I love Effingham. People that have been around, I live in Dot Field's old place, so it's just if you know where she lives, it's just a slice of heaven, and I just love it. And I started coming to selectmen meetings and wanted to get involved, and budget committee was suggested, so I threw my name in, and I don't want to be the guy in the back of the room complaining all the time, so I thought maybe if I could get involved and try to be more of a positive, part of town, that would be good. The more I go to budget committee meetings and the more selectmen meetings I go to, I wonder about the choice I've made. But, I've made it. I just want to be involved in town. I want to help town. I want to help town grow in a positive way. I know we've got this much money and this many problems, and we've got to figure out how to make that happen, and it's not easy, and especially with all the laws and regulations and personalities and politics. And I also know that these two guys sitting on each side of me are really good candidates, and listen to them and select the best ones. I mean, I would vote. I'm going to vote for these two.
Okay, Chuck Fuller.
Chuck rather than Charles. Thank you very much. I'm Chuck Fuller. We've owned property in town since 2005 up on Snow Road. We bought the old Hens Place after previous owners moved on. My wife Grace and I live there now full-time as of the summer 2016. So we're here, and I thought it was about time to begin to get involved with the town to see what I might be able to do in providing assistance. I've got a corporate background in technology, running budgets and people and other things like that. I know processes as far as RFPs and legal contracting and things like that. I've done that. I'm also a certified financial planner. So part of what I'm doing right now in kind of my semi-retirement position is I actually have a fee-based practice for small business and personal financial planning for retirement estate, things like that. So without giving you too much information, I mean, I could give you a lot. I actually have a handout which I'll put on the back table as you're going out. If you're interested, pick it up and you can get into full details. I really believe with the background I've had that I could come in and help with some fresh ideas and help really bring the budget committee with some new scope. So, thank you.
Okay. Anybody have questions for any of the budget committee candidates? Yes.
What kind of fresh ideas are you talking about? What do you mean by fresh ideas?
So that's directed at Chuck.
Yeah, and Chuck, I've had a chance to sit for the last few meetings with the budget committee, watching the processes that go on. And Jim's done a great job moving the entire process forward. I believe that there's some things that could be further influenced relative to getting better information out of the constituents that are feeding the information to the budget committee. And I think a lot of that goes to conversations with people to let them know ahead of time that there's an expectation of certain things. And I'm not talking just about something that goes to the selectmen and saying, hey, provide us some information. I'm talking about other constituents, because I listened to some things over the last few meetings where people got information to the town late. That's a case where there's a communication issue. And I'm a firm believer that good communication, proactive communication, to get out there for the people that are interested, you've got to get your information forward. But in many, many cases, people don't know how to pull the information together. And there's simple things we could do to provide help as far as outlines and templates and things like that to help them pull the information together to help the budget committee make the most effective decisions.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for budget committee candidates? Yes, Mr. Potter.
My comments are for all three gentlemen. A few years ago, I was on another committee, and we found it rather difficult to get money budgeted for training. When our great-great-grandfather wanted to be a selectman, the first thing he did before he ran for office was to go out and get a book on how to be a selectman. And the book was a small book the size of a run-of-the-mill novel. Now, it's equivalent to a set of encyclopedias, and it doesn't cover as much. How do you feel on financing education rather than just coming to work?
Who wants to take that one on?
I think education is critical. And being new, I have every intention, if I get elected to come in, the first thing I'm going to do is find out what courses are available at the state level and county level and take them.
We fund almost every budget training. And I think you'd find in most of the budget committee meetings that if you've attended them lately, that all of us pretty much support training and knowledge so we can help the community.
I too feel the same way. Training is important, especially with the fast pace of technology and the way the world's changing and regulations and laws, and we're overregulated. So the more you can take advantage of that, I would be all in. And I think the whole town seems to be on that path where training is more important for everybody's job in the town. And it was talked about quite a bit in the budget committee meetings that I was at about training and making sure they had the proper funding for that.
Okay, other questions for the budget committee candidate? You're a very docile candidate. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Okay, continuing down this side of the ballot, sample ballot, would be trustees for trust funds. Trustees of trust funds vote for not more than one, and there is only one candidate running, Teresa Swanek, but come on up, Teresa.
Well, when I came up here 3 years ago, somebody said, what do the trustees of trust funds do? I was like, I don't know, we trustworthily manage the trusts. Anyway, it's been 3 years and I've learned a lot, and I'm trustees with Karen Payne and Carol Pfister, and it feels like there's just this dynamism that makes us want to go down every little rabbit hole of a trust fund and find out what the town at the time that it created the fund wanted and said, and what the town said later when they changed the fund, and where the money went in, and how the money came out, if it came in, if it came out. In this particular year, at our end of year balancing of the books, we had some questions about the police cruiser fund, and Carol Pfister had taken on doing a little bit more research, and it came to light years before us that some money came out of that fund that's one of the funds. So we have a few different categories of trust funds. Some of them require a town vote for any money to come in or go out. Some of them have agents to expend, like the Board of Selectmen. or the library trustees. The police cruiser purchase fund is a town vote fund. So this was finding money that came out that wasn't in one of the warrant articles at the town meeting of that year. So that's flipping back and forth in the town report of that year. And it actually was a couple different years, but it totaled over $10,000. So that was something, that was news. So we brought that to the budget committee and brought that to the selectmen, actually before we brought it to the budget committee. And I think they've reworked one of the warrant articles that is going to be on the warrant, that was going to be contributing another $10,000 toward the incremental financing of an eventual new police cruiser. But that money is going to go back into the fund because it was taken out, not quite following the way the town had asked for. So that's what we do, I think. That's what we do. So we do an annual report that tells you the beginning and ending balances of all the trust funds. It's in really little print because there's a lot of funds, because it includes all the cemetery trust as well. So it's in all but one that I could find, every annual report. And last year we did a narrative annual report, but generally the annual report is just a 2-page list of all the trust funds, where they began that year and where they ended that year. So that's our job. After town meeting, we meet and we look at the warrants that that showed up at town meeting voted on, and the money articles. We note what is supposed to be going in and what is supposed to be coming out, and then we wait for that to happen because we don't manage the money in town, but we do authorize the money to go in and out of those funds. So then at some point during the year, when there's a request made of us, we'll see if that matches what was authorized by the town. And at the very end of the year, we'll just make sure that all of that happened according to the way the town wished. And that's a lovely job of the trustee of trust funds. So please, someday when there's an opening for trustee of trust funds, it's not hard to learn, and it's really not hard to see that the bank is very helpful, of course, telling you what the balances are. So it's really, we'll hopefully organize all the trusts as well. This within the next coming year or so that in the future trustees will just have it all right there, and it's really not an intimidating job at all. So step up, step up. So any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Melissa.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted, as a member of the budget committee, I want to say thank you for the job that you've done on the 3-person board, and the information and the assistance you provided the budget committee has been invaluable, and you really helped us solve a few puzzles, and I appreciate it. And thank you for running again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very nice. Other questions? Yes.
I just want to do the same as Melissa done. I want to thank you for running. I don't take that job lightly, but somebody has to do it, so I thank you for running.
Thank you very much. Everybody must be eating cupcakes today. Any other questions? Thank you, Teresa.
If you do have any other questions, I'll try to hang around. So feel free to come up.
Very good. So our next position is Zoning Board of Adjustment, ZBA, and there is only one candidate running for a 3-year term, and that's John Davis.
I don't think John is here today.
No, John?
Around for John.
Couldn't get here in time for John. But he is your candidate for ZBA. All right. And the next one is supervisor of the checklist. There are 3 members of the Board of Supervisors of the checklist, and 1 position open this year. It's a 6-year term. Cheryl Fyrick is running. Running for re-election.
Yeah.
She's the incumbent.
And she's not here.
And she is not here tonight.
Around for Cheryl.
All right. cupcake for Cheryl. And let's see, let's go over on the left-hand side of the column. And we'll go to Town Clerk, Tax Collector. Deanna Amaral is here, and she organized this event tonight.
I didn't know I'd have to come up here.
Yes, you do.
So, my name
Deanna is running unopposed for a 3-year term.
Again. Everyone says who would want your job. That's what I get. So I started in 2003 with Marilyn Lawn. We both started together. And then I was appointed in 2013. And I've had the job ever since. And Celine is retiring at the end of March. If you don't know that. And Michelle Mills is going to be my new deputy. She's been training since August. And she still has a lot of training to do in Concord, but she's able to be left alone. So that's a blessing. Yes.
I'm not changing my retirement date.
Celine keeps trying to get out of here earlier and earlier, but I talked her into staying till the end of March.
You want her to make that official in front of all these people?
Yeah, right. It started out the end of May.
Michelle's doing such a great job.
All right. Anything else you want to say?
I do not. I didn't prepare anything. I apologize.
All right, you did a fine job. Questions for Deanna Amaral? Yes.
Do you want me to state my name?
You don't have to if
Okay.
you don't want to.
No, Chris Siemens, you don't have to.
We won't tell anyone.
Chris Siemens.
Dana, with a new year and a new staff member, and thank you, Celine, by the way, is there any discussion or any thought on going back to offering Saturday hours?
No. No. We haven't even thought about it. I don't know. I guess we could have that discussion if Michelle was interested. But there's many Saturdays that I sat here for 4 hours. I did all the Saturdays. Very few people came.
I would be one.
And I tell everybody, because I get the complaint that you're never there when I need you, I will make appointments with people. I've never had anybody call me on it. But I am available for appointments anytime, even on weekends.
Good to know.
Have some refreshments. Any other questions for our tax collector, town clerk, Mr. Morris?
I just want to thank you for allowing bank card payments in your office. You've done that in the last 3 years, and that's been very helpful for a lot of us. Thank you.
Yep. Next it will be at the window.
I'm sorry?
Next it will be at the window.
Right.
Cards at the window.
Yep. Like it. Like it.
Other questions?
No question, but I just want to thank her for running. I know tax
Very
is
good.
not a very good job, but I think you do a good job at it. I've been here for 2 years, and you've done a good job. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Deanna.
Yes.
Okay. Treasurer, it's a 3-year term, and Lori Caldwell is the incumbent and is running for re-election, and I don't see her. Not here? Okay. Lori's here for Lori Caldwell. All right.
Thankless job.
And then to me, trustee of the library for 3 years, and there's also trustee of the library for 1 year, and no one has signed up to run for either position. So, would anybody like to discuss that? Yes. Come on. Can't hide back there in the
planning
kitchen.
on that. I'll be back by the food table.
And stand in front.
And you are?
My name's Grace Fuller.
Grace Fuller. Come right here.
And
Come right here, Grace.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
If I can sit.
You can stand or sit.
Okay.
This is Grace Fuller.
I'm not planning on staying long. So.
Okay.
I
Floor
was
is yours.
asked to be a write-in candidate for the
All right.
1-year term for library,
Oh, come
trustee library. I need practice first, so I'm putting my name out there. It's Grace Fuller, and
That's easy
I'd like
to
to get
spell.
involved. So that's
I have no other remarks to say, but
All
I'll
right.
do my best.
Thank you.
Grace Fuller, right in. Well, wait, Grace. Anybody have any questions for Grace?
Did you read?
I can. I'll even read aloud if you want. Does that make me a viable candidate?
Mr. Potter.
I would like to say that Grace has appeared to be exceedingly competent in the Historical Society at the care and handling of a grouchy old curmudgeon.
Oh, no, not in Effingham. No.
Are you talking about my husband?
No.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that's Grace
Thank
Fuller.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to be a writing candidate for library, trustees of the library? Oh, come on. All right, somebody's got to do it at some point. All right, so that brings us down to Board of Selectmen. We have one position open for 3 years. Henry Spencer is not running for re-election. We have 2 candidates, Mike Halling and Lawrence Edwards. So come on up here.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Okay, so each of you can talk for a minute or two about who you are and why you're running, and then we'll open it to questions. So who wants to go first?
Defer to you.
Lawrence?
You want to go, Lawrence?
Go ahead.
I'm Lawrence Edwards. I was your selectman for for 3 years, okay? I'd like to be a selectman for the next 3 years, if it's possible. But I've been in the construction business for 50 years. So I think I have a background that will offer something to the town. So I'm not going to elaborate on what all the things I've done. I've worked for the town for 40 years, one way or another, being the road agent, being the plowing contractor. So I welcome your questions and I'll try to answer them the best I can.
All right, Mike, you want to? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Mike Cahallen. I've been in town for a little over 20 years. I have been doing things for the town since about 2010, got involved, and I've been on the Historic District Commission for a little while. I've done 4.5 years at the Planning Board. I'm the Vice Chair over there now. 6 years at the ZBA, presently the Chairman. I'm hoping to try and get in conjunction with the Planning Board, a master plan together so that we can really kind of look down the road for planning our capital projects and balance out the tax rate. And pretty much looking to try and collaborate with all our existing boards to try and get everybody a little closer on the same page and working together. Conservation Commission, Planning Board, CBA is kind of a standalone item, and looking forward to trying to see what I can do for the town. I've been attending selectmen's meetings for about 8 years, pretty well versed in a lot of how the town runs. I go to a lot of various trainings that are available to the board members, and like Lauren said, look forward to your questions.
All right, who wants to start with some questions? I knew you would, Irene. Go
Mr. Cahalan, what is your professional background?
My professional background, I was in corporate industry. I ran a 24/7 operation for a Fortune 500 company, small operation.
You worked for Gillette, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And that's my background there. I retired a little bit early, and I'm presently retired. I do a little this and a little that to keep myself busy. Does that satisfy your question?
Good, all right.
Okay.
Other questions?
This is for either candidate. There are a lot of proposed warrant articles for large projects for the town. I won't get into the discussion of bridges. We all know how that went last night, but I will ask a question about a warrant article for the road reclamation and reconstruction of Green Mountain Road. Just your thoughts and opinions on that section and that project as proposed, as opposed to maybe doing a different section of town, or your thoughts on that warrant article and that project. Either one of you.
You want that one, or you want me to go first?
Either way, I can answer that. I don't care what we're doing on the roads, I'm in favor of improving our roads. Our roads have deteriorated drastically, and we put our roads off to get our bridges done. We haven't even got our bridges done, so I'm for fixing any road there is, but rather than jump around, why don't we start where we left off on the Townhouse Road, continue that around, that meets Green Mountain Road, and then continue down Green Mountain Road.
Mike?
Well, we had kind of a plan put together a few years ago. I believe Tim Eldridge, when he was a selectman, put a plan together there. And a lot of that was, at the time, focused on Green Mountain Road. Some of this is a throwback to work that UNH had done and Lakes Region Planning. So there was some focus on the necessity of the roads in question, who gets done first, what road. So when I look at that, I think that it's a stretch in between what Lauren said to the beginning of where we're looking to start on that road. And I don't think it's really that necessary to focus on that small bit, personally. I think going with Green Mountain and following it out is probably a good plan. It's more in line with what was done on Townhouse Road. And there's a DOT minimum standard that I believe is the intent to apply there, so that there'll be more, it's the best way to spend your dollar. You go down a certain depth and you have a process that's laid out to build the road to that standard. It's held up really well so far on Townhouse Road, and we obviously complete this road, we'll have probably another 10 miles of road in town. This is a four-year plan. So like Lauren said, our roads are pretty tough shape and have lacked attention for a long time. And I think it's the right step. I think it's a good step. And working from that section back out, I think, is a preferred route, according to F.R. Carroll, as far as how it works for them, trucking in materials and keeping the road from getting disfigured while they're doing the construction, as opposed to starting from the other end. But definitely in favor of doing the roads. I'd like to get all our roads done, and I think the maintenance of our roads is a huge item. We've got roads that now have cracks in them that we did not that long ago, and crack sealing is probably should become more of a focus, because you can't let water get through the surface. As it gets in there, and that's what will do all your damage, and it brings all the fines in, which clogs up underneath the road so water doesn't flow. Fines are great on a dirt road, they work against you on a tar road. So maintenance on the roads we repair is going to become a critical issue, as well as going forward and doing more repairs.
Okay, other questions for the select? Yes.
Sure, Fuller. Could you both speak to this issue? I've been a little surprised that I haven't seen a capital improvement plan for this town relative to the buildings, bridges and roads and things like that. If you're elected, either one of you as selectmen, what will be your focus in looking at something like that down the road?
Well, when I was in as selectman, we did look at our buildings. We went through our buildings and tried to determine what needed to be done. And most of our buildings was more of a maintenance thing rather than a capital improvement thing. And that's true. When we look at roads, that is a capital improvement. So, and that's what I said. Why do we jump around? Why don't we stopped at the end of Townhouse Road, where it goes on to Champion Road and goes on to Jones Road. Why don't we start there, continue that around, rather than jump around and do a section of Green Mountain, and we go, and not only that, the section of Jones and Drake are the worst roads we got in town. In my opinion, those roads need to be fixed before we fix the others. Yes, we need to keep up on the roads that we have already improved, keep them crack sealed and that, so that they don't deteriorate any further. But when we go to make an improvement on the road, let's continue it so that when we get to the other end, we've got the whole road done, not just a section of it.
Follow-up question, Lawrence. I mean, I understand the road part of that. I'm looking at something that's at a higher level, like a written plan that says XYZ roads in this condition. We need to do something with it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. This bridge needs to be replaced in 25 years. What do we need to do? This building might need major work on it, like the one on top of the old library. Those kinds of things in a written plan. I haven't seen anything or even heard that discussed.
That's true. We do. We have a historical town hall, which they call the library now. A lot of people call it just the library. It's the town hall. That town hall is deteriorating because we need to do the groundwork before we get to the building. We need to put the drainage in, cut the parking lot down, put the retaining wall in, get the parking lot repaid, do all the groundwork before we work on the building.
What you're describing is the outline of the plan. All I'm saying is, how do we get that from the concept to the written document that says what we want to do?
So, in my opinion, we ought to have a committee form that will help us on our capital improvement plan. So that, like you say, either 5 or 10 years down the road, we know where we're going.
Mike, do you want to jump in?
Sure. The capital improvement plan is something I'm very invested in as far as getting that done for the town. At present, we have been trying to work on that at the planning board. We tried to form a committee, but the folks that had showed an interest really didn't peter out. They really didn't form together. And we've had some committees that have worked in the past and some that just haven't. So the planning board has adopted themselves to be the committee. And last year we had started doing a work session by every other week, 2 weeks in the month. After our regularly scheduled meeting, we were doing work sessions to focus on this. As part of that, I was designated to be the liaison to the fire department, the police department, and the board of selectmen to get that kind of information in that Chuck's talking about. Because what we want to do is establish a road plan, obviously, something that we can have input from the public on as to what roads are the ones we would want to tackle first. What are the biggest problems, and get community input from that. And the capital improvement plan goes out as far as 10 years, so you can kind of put these things in a structure so big ticket items don't land in the same year, so it doesn't really spike your tax rates in town. But we have had blower door tests on our buildings for energy efficiency. The building Lawrence was talking about, there's an architectural report from someone who does specialize in these old buildings. That's on file. I'm pursuing contact through the selectmen gave me some information to pursue grant writers and block grant people. I've been talking to them this week. I've got a call into a gentleman who could probably help us out with some things at the library, mostly energy. The block grants don't cover the groundwork and certain things. We do have some capital reserve funds for buildings such as that. But what we want to do is we want to take everything in town that has a shelf life of 2 years or more, and we've set a number, whether it's going to be $5,000 or $10,000 in value, inventory it, and just start going through the process of what we have here in town and to try and address it if it needs to, or make a plan to address any of the buildings, long range, getting input from the selectmen as to like this building. What do you want to do with it? It's already at capacity. We have a modular behind us that's really not great and probably needs to be replaced. Do you replace it with a modular? Do you add on to this building? Public input. You know, that's what we want to do. And with a capital improvement plan, we can foster a lot more public input to come in and give us that, as well as there's probably a lot of people with a lot of professional knowledge in various areas or working knowledge that can help, you know, guide the town in a direction in some of these issues. So it is going to be a focal point at the planning board this year. And again, we probably ought to get that on the website for those meetings so that people can be notified of when we're going to be addressing those things, because like Chuck says, this covers everything in the town, whether it's bridges, roads, this building, the transfer station, you name it. And the more input, we can really prioritize certain things better, allocate funds better. And then when we get to town meeting, we aren't all clamoring on why we're doing something. We can all be focused in on we've discussed this before, and most people may have already had some input on it. So hopefully that'll do a lot for communications, focus. And again, that's bringing some of the boards together, working planning board with the selectmen. Maybe the Conservation Commission weighs in on some wetland issues as we cross roads and do all of that. So that's a big one.
Other questions for Selectman?
I promise not to say anything about the roads.
Okay.
This could be for both of them. Are you in favor of returning to the tradition of dedicating the town report?
We did last year. That went to,
Yeah, it did, but that was the only year.
But we haven't done it for a while.
Will it continue?
I don't see why not. Personally, I'm certainly in favor of it. We've had a lot of people over the decades that have done a lot of good things for the town. I'm absolutely in favor of it. People should be recognized for their contribution.
Yes, definitely. I think people in this town that have done work for this town, they need to be dedicated, and also the veterans of this town, they need to be recognized. Yes, I'm fully in for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes.
Can both the candidates actually just give the overall agenda of anything that they want to work on during the term?
Yes, an agenda.
An agenda. Well, planning, the master plan is certainly one of the things. A road plan is one of the other things. We've got some bridges that need to be considered. We've got culverts that need to be considered. We have a lot of budgeting concerns brought up by the budget committee, how they would like to see the process move forward to help them make decisions on how to spend our money. So there's all of that in the day-to-day running of the town. I also look at the transfer station, and I'd like to think down the road, because we're probably using about an acre, maybe an acre and a half of that property, and I believe it's 315 acres. So I would consider, you know, maybe it's not in my tenure here as working on town boards and committees, but the day will come when we probably need to put aside room for growth for town bonds and fire departments and all that. I certainly would like to see something done with this building because we're at capacity. And all of that takes input from everybody else. It's your tax dollars, how we spend it. Do you want to do it? So communication with the folks out there to see what your ideas are. So work with the community. Try to get some things moving forward.
Lauren, did you want to jump into that?
My priority is we put our roads off for 3 years to get our bridges done. That hasn't been done. So my priority is get back to our roads, get back to working on our roads. The second would be finish up our bridges. Our bridges have been closed long enough. We need to finish those up. The third one is the town hall, which some people call the library. That building's gonna fall down around our ears if we don't get going. We've put that off, but we're trying to get a grant in. Now, if I got anything against Henry, Henry's trying to get a grant for the last 3 years and hasn't done anything. We have somebody right in this town that's offered to do a grant for us for free, and we don't take them up on it. That's not very good planning in my view.
Other questions for the selectman candidate? Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, for both candidates. I'd just like to know how you feel about future development, both commercial and residential here in town over the next few years. And I'd also like to ask you how you feel about the new law New Hampshire has about second dwellings on existing sites, which can be an issue with zoning, some people, you know, but it's also supposed to be an incentive for growth and low-income housing and to spur the local economies. Just like to know how both of you feel about that.
All right. Who wants to jump in?
You want me to go, or you want to go?
I'll give you the pitch.
Oh, okay, Lawrence?
Yeah.
Thank you. Tim, I'm going to address your second half of the question, the ADUs. 4 years ago, one of the things I wanted to do, becoming a planning board member, was one of the focal points of getting on the board, was to address accessory dwelling units. And for people to really understand what that means, it's often referred to as a mother-in-law's apartment, a fully livable unit, so that you could have that in your house. We didn't have anything to allow that, and a lot of folks had spoken out about that they thought it would be good and beneficial to have something like that. Well, that got put on the back burner for a while because the state of New Hampshire started tinkering around with the idea of making it mandatory. So once they finalized what they wanted to do, they said that everybody in your house, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. What you could do if you were a municipality is you could allow a second building separate from the house to be an accessory dwelling unit, but that wasn't mandated. So I attended a lot of workshops and put in a considerable amount of time trying to find out how you can fit a second building on a property in Effingham with the restraints we may or may not have. We don't have a lot of code and building enforcement, so you couldn't lift anything from a big town and fit it here. So it took a lot of customizing, but with the planning board and a lot of work from the planning board to really shrink this down. And for anybody who knew Barbara and Tom Thompson, they helped me on a subcommittee. They tremendous amount of help there in research. They were wonderful. We brought that to the floor, I believe it was last year or the year before, and you folks voted it in. So if you have a solid 3.5 acres of buildable space on your lot, you can actually put in a 1,200 square foot structure, second building, and it could be up to 35 feet high in the building codes, and we weren't even counting the decks to go on it. So it gave you some real living space. You can rent it. You can have family move in there to be a support system, and it certainly can offset your taxes if you had a big property, family-owned property that you didn't want to break up, and that can add to your tax base. I talked with Avatar, the assessors, and they were giving me numbers that a building like that could probably be about $120,000 worth of taxable worth, so that would add to the tax base.
Okay, Mike, if I may, you're saying that you guys created this and provided that to us as a town.
Yeah.
This is something that the state came up with last year. Mandated.
They mandated it in 2017. We were proactive and we got it in before them once they gave the RSA 672 and they outlined just what.
All right. You like. You have a lot of. I know. The first half of my question. How do you feel about the
commercial industry?
Commercial. Us being. How do you feel about the town? Whether we should be leery or standoffish about any future development, or should we have open arms and hope to add to the tax base?
Sure. Well, with that one, Tim, what we do is we have a permitted use chart in the zoning ordinance which covers a wide variety of businesses that are acceptable to the town. Most of them would be allowed only through a special exception. They're not allowed everywhere in town. Say like the Province Lake District may have greater restrictions.
Right.
So as far as heavy commercial industry, the town had a master plan survey that went out in 2010, and overwhelmingly that wasn't felt by the respondents to be a great idea. But cottage industries and home industries were just tremendously supported, so we worked on refining that at the planning board to breaking those out. As far as residential, we have a zoning ordinance that's pretty liberal towards the building. It's just regulated by setback. Another thing that when I got to the planning board that I brought with me from the ZBA was we had a lot of cases that were just going to those little tiny lots that were there before zoning. And we had a 10% rule, as we called it. You could only build on 10% of the lot. And if you applied like the historic district or Province Lake, maybe, I think it's Province Lake's setbacks, if you took a perfect cube, 100 by 100, a builder's quarter acre kind of thing, you ended up with a rectangle in the center. And that rectangle was 24% of the lot. So the obvious question is why are we making people, just restricting them to 10%? So we worked on that for 2 years. On the first time, it was a little too complicated. So the second time, I just asked the planning board to support a simplified version of allowing 20% on these little lots. And you folks voted it in. The only restriction we'll find is on these little lots, you'll have setback issues. So to get your 20% or a portion thereof that's more than the 10, you may have to go to the ZBA for a variance. But there again, that'll go to your tax base. That'll, you know, people can have a garage, or God knows I love to see your lawnmower rusting out there in the yard, but now we're going to let you have a shed to put it in. So.
The answer to my question is that yes, but you will be introduced to each and every board that Effingham has before you're allowed to.
No, I didn't say that.
All right,
Tim.
let's let Lawrence take a crack at these two questions.
Okay.
Accessory dwelling units and development in general.
Accessory dwelling, yes, I'm all for that. I think when people get old and they need to come and live with their children, I'm all for that. I don't see that there's anything wrong with that. I'm all for that. And on the other hand, we don't have no tax base in this town. So any commercial that we can somehow influence to come to this town, I'm all for it. Now, if we need to relax some of our regulations to get there, I'm for it.
Other questions for the selectmen? All right, Irene, then Chris, then Mr. Potter.
Okay, we're going back to the roads.
Oh, man.
Yellow lines have become a concern
Cupcakes,
for
everybody.
some citizens. Would you be willing to put yellow lines on Green Mountain Road when it's done? I know they're expensive. I don't care. I want to find out what you think about it.
You want me to go? You can already.
I'll take that.
Okay.
I know that we don't have a lot of money for our roads, but the yellow line is very inexpensive, and I am for putting a yellow line on a major road that has a lot of traffic. I'm not for putting those yellow lines on all of our roads, but the main roads that have a lot of traffic, I'm for.
Good, Mike?
Well, for me, I don't know what the actual cost or what the state how that's regulated. I've heard some varying things about the upkeep of them and certain liability factors. So to absolutely support it without knowing how it all works, I wouldn't commit to. But as I am born in the 50s, my eyesight is weaker at night as I drive down the roads. I certainly understand the concern. And if it's raining out,
in the 30s.
well, Irene, I can always ask you questions. What am I going to be facing? So I take that very seriously, though. It is a real concern, and you know, it should be explored. As you said, it's come up several times now, and you know, I guess that's just one of those things before I could commit to it. A little due diligence to really understand the cost and the effect of it. But you know, if it's reasonable in the budget to do something like that, I don't see why it's not a reasonable idea to follow.
I'm still speaking about the yellow lines.
As I understand it, if you do a center line, that you do not have to do the whole, everything. You could do just certain sections. That's my understanding.
All right, Chris, you were next, and then Mr. Potter.
Because she opened the door again on roads, I guess I'll ask this question. What is your opinion of, kind of a two-part question, what is your opinion of going back to, I know the planning board had a discussion, and there's a warrant article, a zoning amendment that deals with some language because of the road agent. What is your opinion of going back to a road agent as opposed to having that task being put onto the Board of Selectmen, and or have it put back into the contracts for the winter and summer contracts so that the contractor is your road agent?
Right, so basically, you want to keep doing it the way we're doing it, or do you want to go to a road agent? Is that what you're saying?
No, because the way we do it's the selectmen. So I said two options. Because once upon a time, obviously we had two ways before. We had a road agent that was elected or appointed, and then it went to, as Lawrence stated himself, 40 years he worked for the town as a contractor in different capacities, and we used to, some boards put it into the contract that it was the responsibility of the contractor for summer or winter, whichever it was, to be the road agent. And now it falls on the Board of Selectmen. So would you want to see a road agent the way it is currently, or have it put back into the contract so that it's the contractor that's the road agent?
Well, Chris, it seems like I'm making straight eye contact with you, so do you want me to
He
answer
can't
that
see you,
first?
so.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. For me, I think it's a little premature to go with a road agent. I know, for myself, I'm involved in the Road Scholar Program, the trainings that are out there, and I've been taking those classes with the state to learn about roads and so forth. I just don't think we have the money to support more personnel and a bigger budget at this point in time. I think our money is better spent on upgrading our roads. We may get to that point, but for me right now, I don't see that as a really great option. I've heard things like the town bonds and putting staff in. This tends to be a great expense with this. And right now, I think the selectmen need to get their own singular focus on roads, along with master plan and input from the community on where we need to spend the money. Once we get the input and a focus on roads and an actual plan that people are on board with, I see you stay with the plan, you get your roads squared away, and we have a very limited budget to start applying to roads. I mean, you could just go right through the budget if somebody would just want to go out and fix the place, because there's just so much to fix. So I think we're still at a point of a little tighter control with the budget. So I just don't think there's really room there yet for a road agent. We may grow into that at some point, though.
Right. Lauren?
I guess I misunderstood the question that was asked. Was you asking, do we need a road agent, or do we want the road contractor that we have now as a road agent?
My question was, the current policy, if I'm not mistaken, is the Board of Selectmen are the road agents.
Right.
So are you in favor of leaving that the way it is, having a road agent, or going back to the way it used to be at times whenever you award a contract, it's written into the contract for either the summer or winter roads contractor to be the road agent?
So 3 options.
3 options.
Yeah. Which do you prefer?
Well, I guess I'm going to have to ask that question over again. Right now, we are supposed to, the selectmen are supposed to appoint a road agent. That was adopted back in 1970. The selectmen would appoint the road agent. They did that for about, I'm just guessing, 25 years. And then they changed it so the selectmen are the road agents. And I don't think the selectmen should be the road agents in this town. Now, if you're saying, do we want to hire a person to be the road agent, I don't think the town can afford it. If we can find somebody that's retired and willing to come in and, say, do 10 or 12 hours a week, I would support that. Yes. Does that, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
All right, we're going to go to Mr. Potter. Next question.
Yeah, that was all planned to make sure you pay attention.
That was the next question.
Everybody look away.
I can remember when we had a do-nothing Congress. It was the 80th Congress. Things have got progressively worse in Washington, and yes, I would say Concord. They have taken more money from us than they have given us back. Now, I think both of the gentlemen sitting up front are somewhat frustrated with the past few years. For about 3 or 4 years, we've had a road emergency, and things that everybody agreed that should be done and done promptly have not been done. What can we do to get the roadblock lifted?
All right, who wants to jump in?
Can I answer that question first?
Yep.
I'm going to give you a perfect example of that of last night. last night they were supposed to award the bid for the Stowe Road Bridge to be replaced. When, back in February, we decided, the three selectmen decided that we would go with option 2 on that bridge, which was to put in shallow footings and put up a poured deck across it. And we got a price of $260,000 to replace that bridge. The selectman that's in there now that thought that the fact that I bid on the bridge, it would be a conflict of interest. Well, I'm not selectman, and there's no telling. That's a big if I'm going to be in election day. So there's no reason why I can't bid on that bridge, and we was the low bidder. So they threw it out. Now that, to me, they wasted $14,100 because that's what the engineer charged them to engineer the bid and do the process of the bidding. So in my opinion, they wasted $14,000. They went back to option 1, which was to pour 2 shallow footings and pour a slab across what's the existing culverts that are now. To me, that's not very good planning. We took us 4 years to get the Stevens Road Bridge in, and we finally got that in, and we was the low bidders on that, and we put that bridge in. So we still have the Granite Road Bridge, which has been closed for three and a half years. We had money in the bridge fund. We had enough money to do the Snow Road and do the Granite Road Bridge. We could have had them done, all done, and they threw it out.
Mike, the floor is yours.
Well, all right. We have 2 bridges that I would like to see open as well, if that's what people want on one of them. I know there's some thoughts that some people don't want to see it open. My thoughts on opening Granite Road Bridge go to the troubles we're having with snow removal and the contractors that plow down there that are getting stuck. There's no turnarounds. Backing up in a snowstorm, especially on the western side of the Granite Road Bridge, is extremely difficult for them. It poses all kinds of problems. So we have some safety issues there. It's not just simply a matter of convenience. That said, what took place this week was, well, I'll go back to town meeting. We had an engineer come in. I watched Government Oversight today. It's on there. And Mr. Ekman came in and he said he was very confident that we could achieve the replacement of Snow Road Bridge for $160,000. We got 7 bidders, 6 pre-approved people from DOT, pre-approved bridge program. And the bids were varied for different options on construction. So there were 11 bids total. You add all the bids up and you divide them, and the average cost was $483,000. We were told $160,000, so you can see there's a little question there of just what's taking place. There was the low bid at $260,000, that's true, but it was another $100,000 that nobody actually approved. I don't think this is too far to go, since they made their decision so far to hold off on that, and they're reviewing option 1, which is a deck across, which is leaving the culverts there. I don't think that's ideal. However, we have time. That money is carried over. Well, it can be carried over into next year, the $160,000. My thoughts on that is we can approach to see if there's engineering companies, if there are other options that are better than somewhere in the middle of the 2 we have. I know Chris threw some out the other evening too, potential options, I believe, crushed culvert or something. Not familiar with it. Other than that, though, we could rebid this to go into October, say, and get another go-round of bidders to see if that changes. Mr. Ekman wants to put out a bid for that deck portion, option 1, which, you know, you can say $100,000, but when you say $160,000 and it comes out to $480,000 and is a ballpark, I'm a little hesitant to just sign on with whatever he says. I'd like to see real numbers. In fact, I would like to see the real number that we could bring to town meeting. If we needed more than 160, I'd like to have that decided, have gone through the contractors, have picked the contractor, this is the price, it doesn't move, no bait and switch, and then present that at town meeting and build the bridge. Otherwise, if the town meeting says, listen, now we're talking too much money, we don't want to spend it, we should have already with us option 1 as a backup that won't need to be a town warrant article because it should come under the originally approved 160. And if it needs some kind of amendment put forward to use that money in a different fashion, we can address it then. So we have the 2 options, and we may have another option in the middle, but I'd like to see them all explored. And ultimately, the way I'd like to do business is I don't want to say, I've got no idea, no plan, I've got an idea, it's going to cost a whole bunch of money, but not that much money, give me the money and stand back and I'll get it done. I'd rather bring you everything signed, sealed with a bow on it, this is the price, it's not moving, do you want it, or do we do something else? And that's what I'd like to see. And that goes for both bridges.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for the select candidates? Yes, David, and then Ken.
The Budget Committee has worked hard over the years to try and get a plan on the select board so we could have concrete numbers for road projects. And over the years, we came up with and found the engineered plan by UNH. And upon that, found out that the previous select board had came up with a plan for roads on how to do it. This select board approved a plan on how to do the roads based on that engineering study and the previous select board schedule. Now, what I'm hearing right now is that you're trying to deviate from that. So what I'd like to know from both of you, do you support the select board plan that was finally approved to do the roads, which starts with Green Mountain Road? Do you support that?
Can I answer that, Dave? We have estimates. We do not have a number. We have an estimate for the paving and for the reclaiming of the first section of that is 9,300 feet. We have a price, an estimate, not a price, we have an estimate to do the 2 sections that's going to be box cut and a little section that needs to be, has some ditching done, and to replace some of the culvert. This is all we have. We don't have any price to do any, I haven't seen any plan that shows how much gravel we're putting on. So when you say you have a figure, your figure is not accurate. We don't have a total figure for that Green Mountain Road that we can say to the taxpayers in this town that 9,300 feet is going to cost us $200,000, or is it going to cost us $400,000? We don't have that figure.
But your question
I'm not
was,
asking for the figure wise.
yes.
I'm asking if you support the plan that per the engineering study, the previous select board's schedule, and this last select board's approval of that road plan. Do you support that road plan based on those? We finally have a plan to do roads. How you come up with the money to do it is a different fact.
It's a plan.
It's a plan so we can budget for different amounts going through.
Well,
do you support that
have
plan?
an engineered plan. Who is the engineer? I haven't seen any of that, Dave. I'm not disputing your word. I just say as myself, I asked for that plan and I haven't seen that plan. So when you say you have an engineered plan, who is the engineer?
UNH study and the
okay.
Lakes region was part of that group that came through and evaluated all the roads that the previous select board. That's all. That's fine, Warren. I just wondered if you follow that.
This is what I'd like to say about that.
Both of you.
UNH did do a good plan, but where they got the numbers from, I don't know, because we've said that several times that their figures don't come anywhere near what we can do that work for. Their figures are way low. Their figures are about a third of what it would cost us to do that work. So how they come up with the figures, we don't know.
Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, okay, that study was done in 2013, and it lays out the processes and some hypothetical numbers to follow the roads. And I support it with the one exception that it has been a number of years and it hasn't been adhered to. So it may, due to varying effects in those 5 years on the roads we have, one road may have shifted in front of another. But this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about adopting for a master plan and for the board to adopt, is a regimented road plan that we can put out in a master plan, in a capital improvement plan, so that people can stay with it. It's still flexible if we have one road that kind of needs attention over another one. But there are numbers in there that are not the best because we didn't have the best data here to give them. So I think that what I'd like to see is take that plan and stay with it as much as we can, but review it again, update it. And when we get to the point where we feel we can actually apply it, I know that Melissa Siemens has brought up a couple of times the road service maintenance plan that Lakes Region offers, and I have talked to them about that. It only encompasses the tar roads. So the dirt roads are a separate issue if we wanted to pursue it. It does cost some money, and they were willing to kick in some percentage for us when I talked to them last year to help pay for that. But yeah, I'm all in on trying to adhere to the plan that was designed. It just needs a review. It is 5 years old, and the information we gathered was sketchy at times. So I know that you have worked on your own version or some aspects of that. And there again, folks like yourself, the gentleman sitting next to you works for the road building industry. I think we've got a lot of people here that could probably help looking at that. But that's part of putting it together for capital improvement.
All right, folks, do you have other questions? Okay, Jim, Melissa, and Chris. Jim.
My question is, we chip in as a town to support our whole community except plowing roads. How do you feel about plowing all the roads in the town of Effingham? Mike?
For me, that's a money item that I wouldn't think to try and present that myself. I think that's something that the folks in town, whether it's a warrant article, a petition, or it's generated through a capital improvement plan. Is there buzz to adopt those things? It's a big ticket item. You look at the roads, when you start focusing on those roads, you'll find that our subdivision plans call for a minimum of the DOT standards that I keep pushing for, and that would mean that those roads typically would be brought up to those specs before they would be adopted. Because otherwise you hand the bill off to the town for upgrading a road.
Lawrence?
Well, I guess I'll say that if the road hasn't been adopted approved by the planning board, and then it has to go to town meeting for the people to adopt that road as a town road, then we can't spend any money on it. We can't spend any money on a private road. So, no, I don't support that, no. Not unless that's brought up to town specifications and the town takes it over. Then I support it.
All right, Melissa, I think you were next.
If you attend the weekly selectmen's meetings or watch them or come to the budget meetings, you'll find that probably, just going to throw something out there, 85%, probably more of the meetings are spent discussing roads and bridges. And that would lead the average person to think that that's the only thing that's happening in the town of Effingham or that we care about. So if you could just take a second and think about other areas that you are concerned about within our town, other topics, something other than roads and plans and capital improvement, something. I'm leaving it wide open. Talk to me about cemeteries. Talk to me about flowers. Talk to me about trees. Talk to me about people.
All right.
The betterment of the quality of life in the town of Effingham.
It all comes back to the same plans to me, inclusionism, you know, so. bringing the community together on the projects that we're talking about might foster some of that. I don't know how to bring people together.
Lawrence, you want to jump in?
Well, when I was selectman, we had the only cemetery that the town owns is the Woodland Cemetery, and that was a nightmare. And we spent probably, I'm going to say, at least 6 months trying to straighten that mess out. And we finally got a custodian who was now one of our selectmen to oversee it, and he's been doing a good job with it. And that's, so there is other things rather than roads, but I will say our road is the main, that's where we spend all of our money. So when you say we only talk about roads, well, that's where we spend all of our money. And the bridges is infrastructure. We have to do our bridges. We can't just close them and forget them. We have to do, we need to finish those bridges up.
All right, Chris.
Do you mind if I follow up, sir?
No.
She's
gonna follow
Take
up
it
home. Just to try to narrow that down, because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with that. So there's also our public safety, our police department, fire department, the future growth, the current needs versus future growth, anything you're seeing there. And also, I personally know that I have sat in this room and I have volunteered a number of times. I've put my name up there to volunteer for various things and always either been turned away or never received any kind of response. So maybe anything you might have to say about our public safety realm, and also ways to encourage or actually accept or promote community involvement, so it's not always the same people that are making all the same decisions or the same plans for the rest of us, because there are people that want to get involved.
Well, I'll go, this is jumping back to your first question.
I know,
tying this one
around,
in.
sorry.
No, when you're talking the public safety and the needs of like the police department and the fire department, the capital improvement plan is a thing that it's generating some of this stuff. I know Randy Burbank had brought me some stuff outlining putting a repeater on the top of the mountain, which would tie into the police department, the sheriff's department, state police, fire coverage. Those are the things that I would be focusing on, like Lawrence, the infrastructure and that would take a lot of the discussion at town meeting, like our roads. A lot of that would come out of there. We wouldn't be talking 85% anymore because we'd have the adopted road plan, be part of a master plan, people could be involved in it, and we could see these major things coming. So you might know that your road is a road or two away, so you have to just kind of be patient because we don't have the money to do them all at once. I think that, like you say, it would free up the discussion hour somewhat, and maybe we could gain focus on those things. But right now, it's still the thing to resolve, you know, to get a master plan, to get plans in place, to get the needs of the police and the fire department and the various other departments together. And once we have them organized in a binder that really shows us a direction that's laid out for people, I think that maybe we can relax a little and start talking about the nicer things in life.
All right, Chris. Your turn.
Lawrence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you already did. Did you talk about?
Not yet, Suzette.
Oh, I thought you were.
I was talking so long you fell asleep.
That's right. Yes.
I thought it was the same question. All right. Sorry, Lawrence.
To get back to your question, Melissa, about a safety building. Yes, I'm all for a safety building, but I don't think the town can afford a safety building. And until we get a study on what that safety is going to be and how much that's going to cost us to maintain, how much is it going to cost the heater, how much the light's going to cost, we need to know all these facts before we make any decisions. Okay, and there's grants out there, and our fire chief has been very successful in getting grants for the department, and even our fire warden has been successful in getting grants. So I think that there's grants out there. We just need to be able to apply for the grants, get somebody that knows how to write a grant, and get those grants.
All right, are you ready now to go, Chris? Go ahead.
I guess the timing of my wife's question was appropriate to what I had to say because it's something besides roads. The Veterans Honor Roll Memorial at Lord's Hill sits on the Lord's Hill Meeting House property. There was a committee put together to study and discuss building a new one at the library, the town hall, as I'll always call it, and update it as it needs to be, because obviously we've had a couple of more conflicts since the last one that was on there. Since the last time that was discussed, the Lord's Hill Meeting House Association, I'm not sure that's the exact title. My mother walked out of the room, she's on it, so she could have told me, but they've taken the position that they do not want that to leave their property. It's technically their property, so we can't remove it from there. So, my question would be, would you, and I know it's a sticky situation because we can't technically legally spend money on somebody else's property as a municipality. Would you be in favor of investigating any avenue that we can to go towards that project as it sits now, or to leave that as it sits and build a completely new one in a different location where the town doesn't have to worry about a maintenance issue further down the road? Does that make sense?
So you're talking, this is the one at the library / town hall?
Negative.
No.
Negative. The one that's at Lord's Hill.
Lord's Hill, okay. So they want to keep it?
They want to keep it. They don't want it to leave their property.
Okay, so we can't do anything with that one then, obviously. So didn't you mention the other one though, the library?
Well, what the discussion was to move that one from Lord's Hill to the town hall property and update it, redo it, and build a new one essentially.
And that is on whose property? Because I thought that was on private property as well, or is it not?
No, it's the property adjacent to the library, to the town hall, to behind the parking lot where the flower garden is. Okay. There's somewhat of it's been somewhat cleared, you know, and there's somewhat of a plan put together, but obviously they had to find out first if the Lord's Hill Meeting House members wanted it to leave their property. So it kind of stopped there, but and they don't. So
it's library, it's town property, and you want to erect a new monument or just move?
I'm asking you what you want to do.
What I want to do? You know, it's not something that was on my radar to deal with, Chris, so I would say if there's an interest and a desire to move it somewhere, or looking for an allocated place, or updating it. If it's on private property, it could be difficult to do it. I'm all in favor of updating it. If we want to put something new in on a town property to honor the veterans, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't personally have a plan, you know, in my mind to do it. So for me to address something that I really hadn't thought about would be, you know, kind of difficult. If you had something that you could present, or somebody else has something, a vision to do something with it, we could probably try to work out the details on how to get it done. And then, of course, you know, with the budget committee in the room, we probably need to think about some money aspect of it. And I can't imagine it would be a tremendous amount of money, but then again, I'm uninformed.
Lawrence.
Okay. If the meeting house is willing to keep it where it is, it's been there for 50 years or better, I don't know how long, I know it's been there for that length of time, that's a veterans memorial. I know the town can't spend money on private property, but let's update that somehow. Whether we need to get a grant or we just need to get some people together and come up with the money. But I fully support that, yes. And I don't want to see that move from them where it is now down to the library. I think where it is now, everybody knows where it is. I think it should stay right there.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Do you have more questions? Yes.
So this is towards both candidates, but the current emergency ambulance time arrival is about 20 minutes, I believe. I don't know exactly how long it takes. And that's a contract that should last for 4 years. This is a 3-year position, correct? And at the end of that it probably is gonna be mentioned for a new contract, for a new ambulance contract. Is that something that will be lined up, or just be continued? And so can we somehow reduce that time it takes to get an ambulance to wherever?
Good question. Yeah, the contract will probably need to be renewed or put out, actually, to see if we can spur some competition. I think we're getting to the point where there's not a lot of competition left right now. So I guess we'll have to address that when we get there in that time frame and see what's available to us for competition on that contract. The time is set in the contract, and I think it's under, or actually I think they're allotted more than 20 minutes for a response, and that has been an issue in the past because of some of the hard to reach areas for us, and that's that'll have to be a discussion point because of the location of the ambulance company as it is, in the hopes that we can persuade them to get another location if we stay with them, closer to town, in town, somewhere we can split the border with another town that we share that service with. Ideally would be, I know they moved out of Lord's over there in Ossipee, which probably would have been a faster response time than up there on Plains Road, where they are now at 570 Plains Road. So if we stayed the course with them, I would be very hopeful we could get another satellite facility closer to our town.
Lawrence.
Okay, I was involved in the process when we done the thing. We were paying somewhere around $100,000 for when we was doing it on our own, and when we went with the co-op, that cut our prices down almost in half. I think we're paying either $55,000 or $56,000. So yes, if we can get them to negotiate another contract, I think we should go for it, because that saves us money. Now, the time, response time, I think it's in the contract. They have, I think it was 25% of the time it had to be 25 minutes. Other times it had to be only 20 minutes. Sometimes they're overrunning that time. They moved their facility from Center Ossipee to up on 141, which is in Tampa. So it takes them longer, but I think they're working on it. I think they're trying to do the best they can to satisfy those terms. So I think we have a good ambulance service for the town of Effingham right now, yes.
If I could expand on that a little, like Lawrence was mentioning, the money, there was a graduated pay scale that I think reduced in its amount as the years went on. So, like most things in this world, unfortunately, it comes down to money, and maybe we'd have to decide to pay more to get more. So that would be, again, negotiations. So who knows what they're open to when we get to that point. But that's something to keep in mind. I mean, if it costs more, maybe we can change the game.
Other questions?
The ambulance contract, that reminded me that it's a cooperative with several other towns that helped us get that rate. And also this year, there was some work done to enter into an electric cooperative that's going to save us some money on the town's electric bills, which was great that was pursued. How will you, as a selectman, come out of the vacuum that has historically been Effingham to reach out to selectmen or administrators in other communities and try to work on other cooperative opportunities?
You want me to go on?
Yep, go ahead.
You know, most of those things don't seem to fall into our laps. I think a lot of times we find connections like that through Lakes Region Planning, who we're members with, and that cooperative for electric savings was about $12,000, I believe, this year when I talked to the folks over there, and that was something they constructed. So the Planning Commission is probably the best avenue to connect with other towns that have a similar interest or a connected project or resource that could be shared or exploited for savings. So as to reaching out, you know, to go over to Wakefield or Freedom or Ossipee, I guess somebody would have to present me with an idea as to what you were looking at, because I know that was in your 3-page report from the Budget Committee, your annual report, that it was touched on that very thing. And, you know, not to throw it back at you guys, but I was hoping to touch base with you to see what exactly you meant. I was looking for more specifics, if you had any planned item that you were talking about. If you saw a savings that you could attribute to me in more specifics, an item that could be done.
For an example, when Ossipee did all their town center line striping, it might have been possible to have the contractor come here if we were in the mood to do the center line striping. Okay. Like that. Or when we constructed the salt shed, Wakefield did one at the same time, so we apparently got a better deal. I wasn't following that as well. Well, and we don't need to talk about the specifics of that. Please don't go to the salt shed. But
no, we were just in the shipping portion. There was no collective bargaining agreement.
Being aware of what's going on around and trying to fund things other than taxation or save money, I guess is.
Yeah, well, those are the things I think most people that would sit here on a Tuesday night probably wouldn't have in their mindset as to what we would be going out looking for. So if somebody had a thought, somebody knew of something going on, like Chris often brings things in from Ossipee that are taking place over there that, you know, somebody like myself is probably totally unaware of. So if there was a way to connect with another town that was doing something, and again, if it was line painting, certainly we would probably need to be on board with that process to take advantage of it.
All right, any other questions?
No, I just wanted Lawrence to answer my question.
What?
And Lawrence didn't.
Lawrence, you didn't answer.
I'll make it short, okay?
All right.
Yes, anything that we
People are
can
nodding
do
off.
as a co-op that's gonna save the town of Effingham money, I'm in favor of, yes.
Okay.
So whether it's getting a salt shed, we only save $2,000, it's $2,000 in our pocket. So yeah, I'm in favor of anything that's gonna save the town of Effingham money as long as it's not gonna affect the town down the road.
All right, 2 more questions, there and there. Go.
Okay. It seems to take a long time to get very simple things done in town, even as putting in a culvert. I was wondering how you feel about that and how we can reduce that time and not spend 3, 4, 5 years getting some pretty easy projects done.
Who wants to go first? Go ahead.
I'll take that.
Yes, go right ahead.
As an example, we raised $15,000 to replace the culvert on Pine River Road. And what happened was, they let the money go back, went back into the undesignated fund, instead of rolling that money over so that they could have kept, we more or less lost that money for that culvert. The culvert was $15,000, should have gone out for bid because we have procurement policies that says anything over $15,000 needs to go out to bid. It should have gone out to bid, and we should have got that culvert done. We have another culvert over on a seasonal road over on Molly Philbrook Road, which is a very simple thing to do. We could go over there, I think it's, I'm going to guess it's a 15-inch culvert. We go over there and put a 2-footer in. It ran over a couple of times 2 years ago, I think. Hasn't run over since. 9 times out of 10, there's probably 6 and a leave in it. That's why it run over. We could go over there and change that culvert. We don't need an engineer. We don't need to go to the state for anything. We can increase the size of that and just put it in and have it done. It's just that they think we need an engineer to size that culvert. We got a price to size that little culvert, $7,000 for White Mountain Engineering. I'm not knocking White Mountain Engineering. I think they do a fine job. But the culvert itself, we can go over and put it in for $2,000. We're going to pay $7,000 for an engineer to engineer it? It don't make no sense to me. We're doing things nitpicking things, and we shouldn't be doing it.
Mike?
Yeah, actually, I think that was $25,000. Part of that money went to the AWA project on Wyman Road, actually. That's the Acton Wakefield Watershed Alliance. And that was met with matching funds from the state because it's been, we've established a watershed over there, a map and a plan, so we get to take advantage of some funding. That one got done. Yeah, the Pine River Road one, I have no idea why that didn't get done. I know that the engineer that the town's presently been talking with went out and did some report and study on it, and I haven't heard anything from it since. The Molly Filbert culvert, that one, again, we can size that by 50% larger through the culvert installer program. I think Lawrence has taken that course. I took that course, so we can enlarge that. We can put it in and not be affected by the state or all the cumbersome permitting and such. We have some flexibility here as long as you have a culvert installer make out all the paperwork and send it to state. So one of us, any of us that have that, Bob Battles, I believe, and Josh have those culvert permits, whatever you call certificates. So that could be and should be expedited. I know that the Conservation Commission would like us to do away with the perched effect on that culvert and give it a little more conductivity to the water bed, the stream bed. The state is very much pushing that. So again, that's not a big deal, just digging a little deeper, maybe making the culvert a little longer. So yeah, it's unfortunate those didn't go through. And the money, you know, we didn't lose it. It went into the fund balance, so that money didn't get lost. But it was just a unfortunate oversight on the Board of Selectmen. They didn't carry that particular warrant item over by a vote of the board.
All right, one more question.
I don't have a question. It's actually just a comment that when we were talking about, like, if other towns are doing something that we could do at the same time, like save us some money or whatever. I'm sure they all have websites. And if they have a master plan like we would like to have, I don't know if everybody's got, you know, good communication with some of the other towns or whatever, but if we did, I mean, can we take a look at them? And I'm sure if they could make get any break, they'd want to do it too. So it's just talking to them and seeing what's coming up in the year, even 1 year. Absolutely, you know.
Good idea. We're about to call it quits.
Is there any way that we and the surrounding towns, maybe the select people or something, or one on each board in the like surrounding 5-6 towns could meet once a month and update each other on what they are planning, so that if we could go in on something together, that we might be able to save some money. Is there any way that this could be worked out, do you think?
Well, I think that at the beginning, your idea is good. I don't know if we can get these towns to meet once a month. Maybe once a month is a little too often, because we've got them to only meet once every 6 months. But yeah, if we could get them together, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't know about how we can get people together for these things. I mean, it's a good idea, I agree. It'd be nice to establish communications with other towns in any form that we could to stay on top of what other people are doing, and if they have another interest that we could take advantage of. The problem, I think, is people with scheduling. It's so hard for people, especially with selectmen. They're on call for a lot of different things, and to really schedule them in for another meeting, I don't know how receptive people would be and if schedules would line up.
Could it be a coffee break?
It could be anything, Linda. I mean, you know, it could be a phone call, it could be a touch base.
All right, I am going to wrap this one up. Thank you all for coming. Get your town reports when they come out. Read them, study them, know your roads and bridges, know your budgets, and we'll have a good town meeting. Come out and vote March 13th. team.
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
I would like to lodge a complaint. If the next time
Here, Brian.
water